CL's POV, I didn't remember walking back to the pub. Not really. I must have passed the old chapel, the crooked signpost, the lane that dipped through the trees and up again toward town, but none of it registered, because my body was buzzing. Not in a pleasant way. Not exactly. It was like every part of me was vibrating slightly out of sync with itself, like my skin no longer fit quite right, like the bones beneath it were shifting even if they didn't move. My hearing felt too sharp, my breath too fast, my clothes too heavy, and everywhere I went, I could still smell them. The brothers. Kian's quiet steadiness. Aiden's heat. Liam's eerie stillness. Declan's wildness that felt like it might burn you alive if you got too close. Their scent had settled into my skin like smoke. It hadn't left me since I woke up in their house that morning. I stripped off my clothes the second I got back to my rented room and stood by the window in nothing but my bra and underwear, the old wooden floor cool under my feet. Outside, the full moon hung swollen and white above the hills, drenching the village in silver. And I felt it. Fuck, I felt it. Something ancient. Something alive. Rising inside me like a tide pulled by the light. I poured myself a glass of water, drank it all in 3 gulps, then went into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. None of it helped. If anything, the sensation only grew worse, like I was restless in my own skin. What was happening to me? I wasn't sick. Not exactly. But I also wasn't okay. And even though the last thing I wanted was to admit that 4 strange men, beautiful, intense, unsettling, might be the only ones who understood what was happening to me, I knew where I needed to go. It's just for answers, I whispered aloud to myself, pulling on my jeans, then a dark green sweater. I need more information. That's all. I laced up my boots, grabbed my coat, and ignored the wild thrum of anticipation in my chest. It's not about them, I told myself again. It wasn't. It was about me. About that crest in the book. About the words wolves beneath the skin. About that strange fire blooming inside me the closer I got to the O'Neills. Kian had to know something. Aiden would tell me if I asked. Maybe even the twins, once I got past their silence. And yet, every excuse I whispered into the cold air sounded like a lie. Because beneath all the logic, all the scholar's curiosity, all the rational layers I'd wrapped around myself to keep the world at a distance, I just wanted to be near them. I wanted to smell them again, hear their voices, watch the way they move. Let myself believe, just for a night, that I wasn't alone anymore, that I belonged. I took a cab to their house. I felt like I was sleepwalking through a dream carved in frost and moonlight. The wind carried a sharp bite. My cheeks burned. My legs seemed to press together so tightly, like I was preventing a secret between my thighs from escaping. When the cab reached the long gravel drive, I was panting. The lights were on. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney. The house looked alive, as though it had been waiting for me. I paused at the edge of the drive, heart pounding so hard it made my ears ring. I could still turn around. I could go back to my room, lock the door, bury myself under covers, and pretend none of this was real. But then a shadow moved across one of the windows, and the pull in my chest snapped tight, like a leash or a lifeline. I needed to see them. I stepped forward, toward whatever the hell was happening to me, toward the hunger I didn't understand, toward the fire in my blood that refused to go quiet. Liam's POV. The moment she stepped into the house, I felt it. The air changed. Her scent threaded through the walls, thick and ripe and electric. It wasn't the scent of her perfume or her shampoo or the linen she slept in. It was the scent of her arousal. The full moon was high now, pouring silver through the forest like a bleeding vein. It stroked her skin, and something inside her, The part of her that had been buried for generations was beginning to rise. We felt it. Declan and I could barely sit still around the fire. Kian tried to keep her distracted with historical talk, scrolls, bloodlines, sacred symbols, but she wasn't listening. Not really. Her pulse fluttered under her jaw like a trapped bird. Her thighs clenched unconsciously beneath the hem of her jeans. She couldn't look at any of us too long. Every glance lingered like she was afraid of what she might see, or want. And then, just before her scent tipped from warm to desperate, she stood abruptly. "It's getting late," she murmured. "I think I should go." But Kian was ready for it. "You're safe here, CL. If you need to lie down, the guest room is ready." I didn't miss the flicker in his eyes when he said it, nor did I miss the way Declan's breath hitched beside me. She nodded, shaky, wide-eyed, and half-swallowed by confusion. Her wolf was stirring, and it was guiding her. She didn't close the door all the way when she went to the guest room. Maybe she meant to. Maybe she forgot. Or maybe she wanted us to follow. I looked at Declan. He was already rising from the couch, muscles coiled and eyes darkened to the edge of gold. "Liam," he said, voice low, rough with restraint. "We can't let her suffer through the pull alone." I stood. "We go slow. She says stop, we stop." "Of course." Upstairs, we crossed the hallway like predators stalking light. The door creaked as I nudged it open. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes glassy with need and confusion. She looked up and didn't flinch. She shivered. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she whispered. "I feel like I'm burning. Inside." I took a single step into the room. "You're not sick, CL. You're awakening." Declan came in behind me, silent and tense. "I don't know what that means." "You will," I said. "We can help you." Her breath caught as we both stepped closer, and she didn't pull away. She leaned in. I knelt first, slowly, between her legs. Her thighs parted instinctively. My hands came to rest on the tops of them, gentle but firm. "Tell me to stop," I said, voice like a growl behind my teeth. "Now, say it, and I will." She blinked, breath shallow. "I don't want you to stop." And that was all I needed. My mouth found the inside of her thigh. She gasped, sharp, raw. Declan came around behind her, kneeling on the bed, hands bracing her shoulders as he pressed his face into the curve of her neck. He inhaled deep, groaning low, like her scent alone was enough to shatter him. "You smell like you were made for us," he breathed against her skin. She trembled between us, legs spreading further as my fingers traced up, teasing the waistband of her jeans. Her hips lifted, offering, needing. I popped the button, pulled the zipper down slowly, savoring the heat that poured from her. She helped me by lifting her hips, eyes never leaving mine. Declan's hands had slipped under her sweater now, palms flattening against her stomach, moving up, until they cradled her breasts, thumbs brushing over her nipples. She moaned, soft, sweet, and broken. "Is this normal?" she panted. "No," I murmured, dragging her jeans down her thighs. "It's ours." I buried my face between her legs as Declan kissed her. Slow, wet, reverent. She writhed. She begged. And when her thighs clenched around my head and her hips bucked helplessly and she shattered for the first time against my mouth, I knew. This was only the beginning. Aiden's POV, I fucking felt her coming before she even arrived at the door. Her scent hit me. Warm, sweet as honey, with a sharp, ripe edge that made my cock twitch. I was in the kitchen, trying to focus on making tea, pretending I didn't feel her in my chest like a second heartbeat. But the second her boots hit the gravel, the bond flared like a match to dry pine. The wolf inside me shifted, snarled, wanting to run to her, grab her, scent her neck, drag her inside, and fuck her senseless. I gripped the counter, breathing through the ache. We had to go slow. Let her choose. She didn't know what she was yet, didn't know what we were. But tonight would change everything. When the doorbell chime finally came, Kian was already moving toward the door. She stood on the threshold, cheeks flushed, eyes wild with unasked questions. She looked like fucking temptation personified. Kian welcomed her in, smooth and calm. Liam and Declan stayed in the shadows, watching with glowing eyes and tense jaws. I stepped forward, offering her a drink, a smile, anything to take the edge off. She sat by the fire, trying to look composed, but I saw the tremble in her fingers, the tightness in her thighs. She was burning up from the inside out, and we all fucking smelled it. The twins couldn't take it. Kian gave them a look, and they left through the back, shifting as soon as the door closed. The snap of bones, the shift of fur. Gone into the woods to burn off the edge of her scent. They weren't gone long. Her arousal filled the air in the woods. The moonlight and her scent made it difficult to run. Kian tried to distract her with talk about McLaughlin history, bloodlines, and sacred texts. I could barely listen. And I know she wasn't hearing a damn word. She kept sneaking glances at me, at Kian, at the door. Her thighs squeezed, her lips parted, and her scent flooded the room, thick and molten. Her arousal wasn't just biological. It was spiritual. Her wolf was waking, and it was calling to us. She didn't look back as she climbed the stairs. But her scent did. It clung to me, wrapped around my throat and pulled. Kian and I waited. We knew the twins went up to see her. If either of them came back downstairs, then we knew she just needed to ride the heat alone. But when they didn't return... Kian looked at me. We both knew she was ready. We could smell her arousal heightened when the twins were with her. I reached for her slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Her fingers found mine, clung, and that was all I needed. Our mouths met like the match had already been struck. Soft at first, uncertain. But when she sighed against my lips, I deepened the kiss, coaxing her open. She tasted like longing. Ciel's POV. The room was a haze of passion and desire, the air thick with the scent of our arousal. I was sandwiched between Liam and Declan, their bodies pressing against mine, their hands exploring every curve, every crevice. I didn't know when Kian and Aiden came into the room, waiting, watching, letting their brothers have their turn, feast on me. Liam's lips were on my neck, sucking and nipping. His hands roamed my body, squeezing my breasts, pinching my nipples, sending jolts of pleasure straight to my core. I moaned, arching into his touch, my body aching for more. Then he slid into my mouth. My lips barely wrapped around him. My jaws widened further than I ever thought it could. Gripping a fistful of my hair, not with force, with control, claiming me as his. His slow movements suddenly became faster. When I heard him moan, I became wetter. Then he threw his head back and released. His warm liquid was sweet. He pulled out of my mouth and whispered, "Swallow me." Declan's hands were lower, his fingers tracing patterns on my thighs, inching closer to my center. He leaned in and whispered, "You're so fucking beautiful, Ciel." I shivered, my body responding to his words, to his touch. His fingers found my entrance, slowly pushing inside, curling and hitting that sweet spot that made me see stars. I cried out, my body bucking against his hand. When his fingers left my core, I whimpered at the loss, but it was quickly replaced by the feel of his hard length at my entrance. He pushed inside slowly, inch by inch, filling me completely. I moaned, my body stretching to accommodate him, the pleasure unlike anything I'd ever felt. He whispered, "You feel so fucking good, Ciel. So tight, so wet." His thrusts were savage, like he was trying to pound his way into my soul. I couldn't hold on any longer. I came so violently, so fast, so hard. Then he finally came. His growl sounded like it was happy to finally be set free. Kian was now behind me, my back resting against his chest. When his finger found my clit, rubbing gently, sending jolts of pleasure through my body, I let out a soft growl. Then he flipped me over onto his lap, straddling him, face to face now. His hands were on my breasts, squeezing and kneading. I moaned into his mouth, my body on fire with need. Aiden's hands found my ass, squeezing and kneading, pulling me tighter against him. I could feel his hard length pressing against my back, and I ached to have him inside me. His lips trailed down my spine, his tongue dipping into the small of my back, leaving a trail of fire on my skin, making me giggle and squirm. His lips were on my ass, his tongue circling my hole, teasing, tasting. I gasped, my body tensing at the foreign sensation, but it quickly turned to pleasure as Aiden's tongue pushed inside, fucking me slowly, preparing me for him. The sensation of being filled from both ends was overwhelming, the pleasure unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I was a writhing, moaning mess, my body on fire with need. Kian moved slowly, bringing me to the edge of ecstasy. His lips found mine, his tongue invading my mouth, claiming me as his. I moaned into his mouth. His movements became faster, more urgent, and I could feel his body tensing, his breath coming in short gasps. With a final thrust, Kian's body was shaking, his breath ragged. He pulled out, his seed spilling onto my thigh. Aiden's hard length at my entrance replaced his tongue. He pushed inside, inch by inch, filling me completely, building my pleasure, bringing me to the edge of ecstasy. With vigorous thrust, he reached around and grabbed my neck. Chest heaving, he quickly pulled out, spilling his seed onto my ass. Their movements were synchronized. Their thrust was dominant. The older brothers were relentless. Overwhelmed with such intense pleasure, I came. My body went limp, boneless. I collapsed onto the bed, my body spent, my mind a blur of pleasure and ecstasy. But they weren't done with me yet. Far from it. Liam and Declan, their cocks hard and ready again, moved into position. Liam positioned himself at my entrance, his eyes locked on mine as he slowly pushed inside. I moaned, my pleasure building once again. Declan, meanwhile, positioned himself at my back, his fingers teasing my hole, preparing me for him. He reached his hand around and slowly began circling my clit. I shivered, my body responding to his touch. He pushed inside, this time with force. The sensation of being filled from both ends was overwhelming, the pleasure unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Liam and Declan moved in sync, their hips thrusting in unison, their bodies slapping against mine. The room was filled with the sounds of our pleasure, our moans and cries echoing off the walls. Kian and Aiden were beside us, their hands and mouths exploring my body, their touches sending shivers of pleasure down my spine. I was surrounded by their love, their passion, their need. I was being consumed, and it felt fucking incredible. And I knew, in that moment, that I was exactly where I was meant to be, with all four of them. Our pleasure built together, our bodies moving as one until we all reached the peak of ecstasy, our cries of pleasure filling the room as we came undone together. Kian's POV. She came down the stairs barefoot, wrapped in one of Aiden's flannels like it could shield her from what last night had awakened. We'd all felt it. Every inch of her body singing with new heat, through the raw scent of satisfaction still clinging to her skin. She looked exhausted, but not weak. Soft, but not broken. She looked like someone standing at the edge of a cliff and finally realizing she could fly. And she didn't yet understand the wings growing inside her. I saw the moment her eyes flicked from me to Aiden, then to Liam and Declan. She registered the tension in the air like static. We weren't trying to intimidate her. We were trying to not touch her. Again. We were trying to let her breathe. She didn't sit until Aiden pulled out a chair. Didn't speak until the silence forced her to. "Good morning," she said, quiet but steady. "Good morning," I answered, then set a mug down gently in front of her. "You didn't have to come down yet." "I couldn't sleep anymore," she replied. "I mean, I slept, like the dead, but now—" I nodded once. "Now you're awake." I took a breath, already knowing what needed to be said. The part that would change everything. "It began before you were born," I said. "Before your parents. Before your family ever left this land." Her fingers wrapped tighter around her mug. "You're McLaughlin by blood. But that's not just a name on a scroll or a surname on a report." She swallowed. Didn't speak. I let the weight hang for a beat. Then, "You're from a line of wolf shifters, CL. Ancient ones, feral ones, sacred ones." Her eyes widened slightly. "Shifters? As in, werewolves?" Aiden chimed in softly. "Shapeshifters. But yes, born with two halves. One flesh, one fur." "I thought that was folklore," she whispered. I gave a small, grim smile. "Stories survive because they hold enough truth to haunt the people who buried them." Declan leaned forward, resting both hands on the back of the chair in front of him. "Your ancestors didn't just rule. They protected. They bonded through instinct, through blood." Liam, ever silent, added from across the table. "And they only mated once. When the bond was formed, it was permanent." That last word landed hard. I watched her flinch, but not from fear. She was feeling it. Still. And so were we. "Your wolf has been dormant since birth," I explained. "Buried by time, distance, and disconnection from your lineage. But last night—" I paused, gauging her. She didn't look away. "Last night the seal broke." She exhaled sharply, a flicker of fire behind her eyes. "You're saying I'm a shapeshifter?" "You will be. You're not fully changed yet. But it's coming." "When?" she asked, voice tight. I watched her closely, the same way I might watch a blade being forged, carefully, reverently. "When your wolf is ready. Could be the next full moon. Could be a moment of danger. Or—" I glanced at Aiden. His throat worked hard. "Or the next time you surrender fully." She flushed. I felt the heat ripple off her, even from across the room. "I didn't know what I was doing last night," she said quietly. "It wasn't logical." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't. It was instinct." Aiden stepped toward her, his voice a little rougher now. "You were awake for the first time." "And we didn't touch you until you invited us in," I added. "That matters." She looked down, swallowed again, then raised her head. "I wanted you. All of you. I still do." I felt every muscle in my body tighten. She had no idea what that confession did to us. Declan muttered a curse under his breath and turned away, jaw clenched like he was hanging on by a thread. Liam's eyes flicked toward the window. Aiden just stood there, soaking her in like a man dying of thirst. And I held the room still with the weight of what I knew had to come next. "CL," I said softly, "do you ever wonder why you've felt alone your whole life?" She nodded, slow and cautious. "Why no relationship ever felt like it fit? Why you couldn't explain the ache that never left, even when things seemed fine on the surface?" Another nod. "That's the wolf," I told her. "That's the part of you that was waiting for its pack, waiting for us." She shivered. "You've been alone," Aiden said, stepping closer. "Because no human could satisfy what you are." "You were born to run with us," Liam murmured, finally. And she looked at me then, eyes glistening with too many emotions to name. "What happens now?" That was the question. I crossed my arms over my chest to keep myself steady. Now we protect you, I said. We help guide you through the changes, the instincts, the shifts, the heat, the chaos of the first time you feel your bones want to break into something new. She looked terrified and beautiful and so damn brave. And we wait, I added, until you're ready to become who you were always meant to be. Your blood, it's ancient, royal, and it's waking up. I handed her a mirror. Your eyes, I said, voice soft. They've changed. She looked. The brown had deepened into an almost gold, flecks of green dancing near the edges. Kian's POV. The morning had barely broken when the summons arrived, delivered not by some mere courier, but by a pulse that throbbed through the earth itself, setting my wolf's hackles on edge. Before my mind could even comprehend the warning, the council was calling, and their summons were as urgent as it was ominous. I looked at my brothers, their expressions mirroring the storm that raged within me. Aiden's jaw was clenched so tightly, I thought his teeth might shatter. Liam's fingers flexed, curling into fists, ready for a fight that was sure to come. Declan's eyes had darkened, a dangerous glint in them that promised retribution if any harm came to what was ours. The parchment I held was heavy with the weight of ancient power, the seal of the elders a stark reminder of the authority that summoned us. The words inside were as cold and unforgiving as the stone from which they were carved. To Kian O'Neill, Alpha of the O'Neill Pack, and his brothers, you are hereby summoned to the council hall to present the newly awakened dire wolf who has manifested upon sacred lands. Her presence demands immediate counsel. Failure to comply will be met with judgment. The words cut through me like a blade, sharp and unforgiving. A dire wolf. Legend spoke of them as ancient, massive, and wild. A force of nature that struck fear into the hearts of even the most powerful packs. For one to appear on our lands was unthinkable, a miracle and a curse all at once. I folded the letter slowly, my movements deliberate as I met the eyes of my brothers. We need to bring Ciel, I said, my voice a low growl. Aiden nodded, his voice matching mine in intensity. She'll understand why. She has to. Declan's growl was a promise of protection and a warning to any who might dare threaten her. The council won't be kind. They fear what they don't control, and Ciel is a power they can't comprehend or seen in over 100 years. Liam, usually the quiet one, spoke with an edge that could cut glass. We've hidden this for too long. Now the world will judge, and they will come for her. We found Ciel in the garden, the sunlight casting a halo around her curly hair as she traced her fingers over the rough stones of the wall. She looked up as we approached, her eyes sharp and wary, sensing the tension that radiated from us. The council has summoned us, I said, getting straight to the point. There was no time for gentleness. Her breath hitched and she clutched the wall for support. Who is the council? Why have they summoned us? Did I do something wrong? I explained to her who the council were and what their purpose was. A dire wolf has appeared on our lands, Aiden said, stepping beside me, his voice firm. That wolf is you, Ciel? She paled, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the stone. Dire wolf? She whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and fear. I knelt to her level, my voice steady and reassuring. Yes, you are a rare and powerful kind, the oldest and strongest of our kind. Your awakening has sent ripples across the pack, and the council demands an audience. She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. What will they do to me? They will judge, question, and demand answers, I said, my voice a promise of protection. But we will be with you every step of the way. Declan placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his voice a low rumble. We're your pack, Ciel. No matter what happens, we're in this together. As we mounted the black-tinted escalade bound for the council hall, I felt the weight of centuries pressing down on us. Ciel sat in the back with the twins on either side of her. I could tell she was nervous and afraid. Declan had a hand resting on her knee, while she rested her head on Liam's shoulder. The ancient stones of the hall awaited, where old laws and older grudges would decide our fate. But one thing was certain. No matter what the council said, no matter what judgments they passed, we would protect Ciel, because she was ours, and the dire wolf would not be taken from us. POV. Ciel. I stood in front of the antique mirror, hands clenched tight at my sides, trying to breathe. The reflection staring back at me was different. Not the same that arrived in Ireland. Not the same person that didn't know where she belonged. Dressed in a white-fitted pantsuit, it exudes power, strength, confidence. My curls fall wildly down my shoulders and back. The silver necklace sat just beneath my collarbone, bore a pendant with the symbol of the McLaughlins, a dire wolf encircled by oak leaves. Cian had shown it to me earlier that morning, unwrapping it from thick linen with a reverence that made my heart ache. It belonged to the last known dire wolf of your bloodline, he'd said. That was what I was now. The last known. I didn't know how to feel. Pride, terror, something in between. The council. Just hearing the word made my stomach knot. Cian's warning had echoed in my head all morning. They don't fear power. They fear what they can't predict. And right now, you're a storm they didn't see coming. That's what I was to them. A threat. An unknown. I didn't even know how to shift yet. I barely understood what I was. All I had was instinct, and the ghosts of a legacy I was still chasing page by page through ancient books. What if I said the wrong thing? What if I couldn't prove I was in control? What if they tried to take me away? Would the brothers fight for me? Would they let the council take me? The knock came soft, followed by the creak of the door. Aiden stepped inside, closing it behind him with care. His eyes traveled over me slowly, not with lust this time, but with something heavier, protective, adoring, fierce. You look beautiful, he said quietly. I tried to laugh. It came out broken. I feel like I'm about to be sentenced by a coven of immortal judges. You are, he admitted, moving closer. But you won't be alone. I don't even know what I am, Aiden. He lifted my hand to his lips. You're ours. That's enough. I felt tears sting, but I didn't let them fall. I'd cried enough last night. Cried as my body shook from too much pleasure, too much truth, too much surrender. Now I had to be steel, even if my hands trembled. Downstairs, the others were waiting. Cian dressed in an all-black suit, Declan pacing like a caged animal, Liam sharpening the edge of a blade not meant for war, but for tradition. The brothers had cleaned up, each wearing black suits with a crimson handkerchief in the lapel, reserved for alpha blood. I hadn't asked what would happen if the council rejected me. I wasn't sure I could bear the answer. Cian stepped forward, adjusting the necklace around my neck. You don't need to speak unless asked. Just hold your head high. Let them see you. See what? That you are already more wolf than most of them ever were. His words struck deep. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe I wasn't just some mutation, some relic. Declan finally stopped pacing. They're going to smell you, he said. Your fear, your heat, everything. You can't hide it from them, so don't try. Embrace it, Liam said from the corner, voice low. Be what they fear. Cian rested his hand on my shoulder. They'll look to shame you for not knowing who you are, but what you are doesn't need to apologize. You were born to shake their foundations. I didn't say anything, because if I did, I'd break, so I nodded instead. And when we stepped out of the house into the mist-soaked mid-morning, I walked in between them, not behind. And for the first time, my wolf stirred in my chest. The council hall was carved from the mountain itself. Cold stone walls veined with age, the ceilings lost in shadow, and fires burning low in half-circle braziers around the chamber's perimeter. Everything smelled like damp ash, moss, and something older. Something that pulsed in my teeth and made the hair at the back of my neck rise. Kian walked beside me, tall and steady. Aiden flanked my left, his hand ghosting near mine without touching. Liam and Declan followed behind, like sentinels, but I could feel their tension in the way they moved, barely restrained, like their wolves were pacing just beneath their skin. They were nervous, and that made me terrified. At the far end of the hall, seated in a wide arc on a raised dais, were the elders. 7 of them, male and female, their eyes old and unblinking, their energy sharp enough to skin the truth off a soul. Each one wore robes the color of bone, stitched with blood thread sigils I didn't recognize but instinctively distrusted. The one in the center leaned forward slightly, his voice sharp and crackling like dry bark. "Bring her forward." Kian touched the small of my back and stepped with me into the circle of firelight. And that was when I felt it. Pressure. Like gravity itself had turned personal, and now it wanted to peel me open. "You are C.L. McLaughlin," the center elder said, eyes like dead coals. "Born of an unknown mother, raised among humans, awakened under the wolf moon by not 1 but 4 bonded males." I swallowed hard and calmly answered, "Yes." "Do you understand what you are?" I hesitated. "I'm a shifter. My wolf just started to awaken." A low sound passed through the elders. Not laughter. Something darker. Pity. "No," another said. An older woman, her mouth tight and cruel. "You are more than that. And that is why we summoned you." Kian's voice cut the air. "She is McLaughlin. Her father's blood is pure and ancestral. That has been confirmed." "Yes," the woman sneered, "but her mother's blood is obscured, shielded, until now." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" The elder in the center raised his hand, and suddenly I couldn't move. My breath hitched. Something unseen rooted me to the stone floor. Then I felt it. A pull in my chest, in my spine, in my blood. It was like something inside me was being turned to face the council, even as I stood frozen. "This is not merely wolf blood," the central elder said coldly. "It is laced with something older, forbidden." Kian stepped forward sharply. "Explain yourselves." The woman elder stood now, her eyes narrowing as they fixed on me. "She has witch blood." The word hit me like a slap. "What?" "Her maternal line," she continued. "It is not human. It is dormant witchcraft, passed through bloodlines that were purged after the last uprising. Hidden, cleverly, but not well enough. Until now." I shook my head. "That's not possible." Aiden moved closer, but Kian raised a hand, warning him back. He looked pale, wary. The female elder circled me now, slow and deliberate. "Your wolf blood called to the land, but your witch blood stirred the bones beneath it. That is why we felt you awaken. That is why the land groaned beneath your feet." Another elder chimed in, old, male, nearly crumbling. "You are not just a shifter. You are a convergence, a thing that should not exist." The firelight pulsed, or maybe it was my heartbeat. I couldn't tell anymore. "I didn't choose this," I whispered. "I didn't know." "Intent is irrelevant," the center elder said. "You are dangerous." Declan's growl echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Touch her, and I swear." "Silence." The woman elder raised her hand, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. The magic in the room shifted, pulled tight like a bowstring, but I was no longer just afraid. I was angry. "You don't even know me," I hissed. "You're judging me because I was born with something you don't understand." "We understand it too well," said the Center Elder. "The last time a shifter with witch blood walked these lands, 3 packs burned." Liam stepped forward at last, his voice steady. "And yet none of them stood before you willingly, like she does now." That silenced them, for a moment. Then the woman elder turned to the others. "This requires a ruling." "Not yet," Kian said. His voice was so calm it made my spine lock. He stepped forward, between me and them. "She is under my protection. Ours. You will not strip her of her rights, her life, or her bloodline without proof of danger. And you will not exile her until she understands what she is and chooses for herself." The woman elder's eyes narrowed. "And if she cannot be trusted?" Kian bared his teeth. "Then it will be our burden, not yours." The hall fell into silence again. Then the Center Elder nodded, coldly. "So be it. She will be watched. She will be tested. And if her presence disrupts the balance of the packs, you 4 will answer for her." Kian didn't flinch. He just nodded once. "We accept that." And that was it. The meeting was over. But as we left the hall, the weight hadn't lifted. It had only gotten heavier, because now I knew that whatever I was becoming, it wasn't just a wolf. It was a witch, too. Was I dangerous? Was I ready for all of this? What if I went back to everything I'd built? My logic, my job, my carefully constructed identity as the rational, educated historian? Who had I become? The old me was invisible, forgotten, unloved. This new me, what am I? Kian's POV. She hadn't said a word the entire ride home. Aiden never let go of her. He kept her wrapped in his arms in the back seat of the Escalade, murmuring softly in her ear while she trembled like something that had just come through a storm. And in truth, she had. She didn't cry at the council hall, not once. But as soon as we crossed the threshold of our home, her body caved, her knees buckled, and Aiden caught her before she hit the floor. Then she cried. Not loud, not messy, but the kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and raw, from the place where truths live when they've never had air until now. She wasn't mourning. She was unraveling. I understood it too well. I stood in the kitchen, watching her bury her face into Aiden's chest, her fingers clutching his shirt like she needed something to hold her together. Liam stood by the hearth, silent but visibly pained. Declan paced the length of the room like a panther, fists tight, jaw twitching with every sound she made. And me? I watched her fall apart and hated that she'd ever had to do it in front of strangers, instead of here, with us. This should have been a homecoming, not a trial. She finally lifted her head, red-eyed but fierce despite the storm. "I don't know who I am," she whispered hoarsely. "Every day I find out something else. That I'm not human, that I'm a wolf, that I'm not just a wolf, but some ancient relic, that my blood holds witchcraft I didn't ask for, don't understand, and now I'm some kind of threat to everything around me. I'm not a person anymore, I'm a problem." "No," I said, stepping forward. Her head snapped toward me. "You are not a problem," I repeated. "You are a prophecy." She blinked. "What?" I crossed the room slowly, dropping to one knee in front of her as Aiden still held her shoulders. My fingers brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, and I held her gaze with mine. "I knew," I said softly. "Back at the library, the day we looked up your lineage, I saw it." She went still. "You knew?" "There was a second branch on your family tree, tied to a mother's bloodline that had been expunged from most historical records. But the few scraps I found, they weren't just old Gaelic names. They were sigils, runes, the kind witches once carved into trees before battle. Why didn't you tell me?" because I didn't want to break your world any sooner than it was already cracking. Her eyes welled again, but this time I saw something in her that hadn't been there before. Hope. You're not just a wolf, CL. You're not just a witch. You're something the world tried to erase and failed. Declan stepped closer. That's why they're afraid of you. Liam added from the fireplace. That's why we're not. I took her hand in mine, lifting it to my lips. You are our Luna, I told her. Her breath caught. Your what? You are our fated mate. Not by accident. Not because of some broken bloodline or twisted spell. Because the moon goddess saw you and chose us to walk beside you. Her lips parted. Even after what the council said? Aiden looked down at her, kissed her temple. Especially after that. They don't get to decide who you are, Declan growled. We do. No, Liam corrected quietly. She does. CL looked at all of us then, tears still in her eyes, but fire in her voice. I'm scared. We'll hold that fear with you, I said. I don't know how to be any of this. You don't have to be anything, Aiden said. You just have to be. And if the council tries to eliminate me? We'll burn everything and everyone, then build you a kingdom, Declan snapped. I smiled at him, then looked back at her. Wolves were made to protect. Witches were made to shape the world. You are the best of both. She pulled her legs up onto the couch and leaned into Aiden's chest again. She let herself be held. And in that moment, I knew the truth I had carried alone was now out in the open, and it hadn't broken us. It had bound us. Whatever came next, exile, war, change, she was no longer alone in it. She had us. POV. CL. It started with dreams, visions of past lives, of running through forests on 4 legs, of howling under full moons, of being hunted and loved and sacrificed. Then came the cravings. Meat, raw and warm. The heat in my veins. The way my body pulsed whenever one of the brothers touched me, even by accident. The first time my wolf broke free, I was with Liam. We were training. He claimed I needed to learn self-defense in case our enemies found us. But the way he held me from behind, correcting my stance, the way his voice dropped when he whispered in my ear, it was anything but innocent. I turned on him, breath ragged, and he didn't flinch. You feel it too, he said. I didn't answer. I lunged. Our mouths met in a brutal clash of teeth and tongue. He slammed me against the stone wall, hands roaming, body hard against mine. I let him take what he needed. I needed it too. My shift didn't come gently. It broke through my skin like fire. Bones snapped, fur erupted, and suddenly I was on all 4s, snarling, furious and alive. It was so painful. I screamed from the depth of my stomach. Thankfully, the pain didn't last long. My senses were heightened. My vision was so crisp and clear. I could hear the wind rustling through the leaves miles away. Liam shifted too. We ran together, naked in our new skins, through the forest beyond the manor, until exhaustion claimed us. It was beautiful. I felt power with every step on my paws. My fur danced in the wind as we ran. Kian was furious. You're not ready, he growled, towering over me, when we got back to the house. She shifted on her own. Her wolf needed to come out, Liam shot back. You're just angry it wasn't you. That night, I found myself caught between all 4 of them, each of them drawn to something in me. Aiden with his wildness, Declan with his obsession, Liam with his dominance, and Kian with his soul-deep tortured need to protect me even from himself. I should have felt overwhelmed, but instead I felt wanted. For the first time in my life, I was not alone. But nothing good ever lasts. Word had spread. Other clans, rivals, corrupted bloodlines, They all wanted the last McLaughlin for themselves, not for love or loyalty, for power, my power. The attack came on a moonless night. Chaos erupted. Blood spilled across the grass. The brothers fought like demons, shifting midair, teeth ripping, claws shredding. I was taken, dragged into the mountains by a vicious warlord named Kale, a shifter who'd once served under the McLaughlins but had turned against them for power. He wanted to mate me, to bind my bloodline to his, to force the rise of a new dynasty. He stood tall and lean, but there was no warmth to him. Nothing like the primal heat that radiated from the brothers. This man radiated emptiness, hunger, power sharpened by time and hate. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hello, little half-blood." I opened my mouth to scream, shift, something, but he moved with inhuman speed. Pain exploded across the back of my skull, and the world folded into black. When I came to, I was cold, freezing, and surrounded by stone. I was in a ruin, an old one. The ceiling was half gone, the walls slick with moss and rot. Ancient Celtic markings were carved into the rock, distorted by age and something else. Something wrong. The man, Kale, I'd learn later, stood across from me near a crumbling altar, arms crossed, eyes glowing the faint amber of a wolf barely hidden. His presence made my skin crawl. "You're finally awake, little half-blood," he said, as if we were lovers sharing morning coffee. "Good. We don't have long." I hated that he called me that. I tried to move. Chains rattled. My wrists were bound with thick silver cuffs, cold enough to sting, and etched with symbols I didn't recognize. "Silver," he said with a smirk. "Not enough to kill. Just enough to remind you that your blood betrays you. You're not just a wolf. You're something else. Something the old world feared." "Where am I? Who are you?" I rasped. He stepped closer. "I'm the one who was supposed to inherit this land, before your mongrel ancestors laid with witches and turned sacred blood into mud." I stared at him. "You're one of them, one of the exiled." His smile sharpened. "I see someone's been doing her homework. But correction, not exiled, erased. But history has a way of correcting itself. And now the council has awakened something they can't control." He leaned down, eye level. "You." I felt it then. The burn inside me. It wasn't fear. It was rage. Old, deep, and not entirely mine. "Do you think you'll be able to keep me long? My mates will come for you. Like I give a damn about those flea-ridden dogs. Let them come. They can watch while I breed you." He chuckled. His laugh made my blood run cold. I was terrified, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing that. POV. Kale. She was a fucking heavy load, but it wasn't just her weight. It was the blood coursing through her veins. It pulsed with old magic and primal instincts, even though she hadn't yet learned to harness them. Not fully. Not like I planned to teach her, or break her. I carried her unconscious body through the forest under the cold moonlight, the scent of the O'Neill brothers still clinging to her skin like a fucking curse. Those four had mated with her, tasted her, and maybe even deluded themselves into thinking they'd claimed her. But fate didn't give a shit about their feelings. It cared about bloodlines and power. And in her, I'd found both. I laid her on the stone altar at the heart of the ancient ruin. This place had seen coronations, sacrifices, and mating bonds blessed in blood and ash. It would serve my purposes again. I unwrapped the silver cuffs and etched them with runes, infusing them with sigils to suppress her wolf. I wasn't stupid enough to underestimate her strength. A dormant dire wolf was dangerous, and a hybrid was uncharted territory, which was why she had to be mine. Not just conquered, but claimed, bound, and impregnated. A new generation of dire wolves with my blood in their veins would rise through her. She stirred just before midnight, her eyelids fluttering as she took her first ragged breath. I watched from the shadowed archway, my heart pounding with anticipation. Her power crackled just beneath her skin like embers ready to ignite. It wasn't just shifter instinct, it was something older, darker, the stench of witchcraft lacing her bones. And still, I wanted her. No, I needed her. If I couldn't take her power for myself, I'd use it to forge a new future where the O'Neills and the Council fell. "Hello, little half-blood," I said, stepping into the light. Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide with a mix of fear and something else, hatred. Good. Let it fester and sharpen her. "Where am I? Who are you?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "A place of old power," I replied, "and soon, a place of new beginnings." She narrowed her eyes, her breath coming in short, angry gasps. "You're one of them, one of the exiled." "I am the rightful heir to the bloodlines the Council tried to erase," I said, circling her like a predator. "But you're proof that they failed." I could see the struggle within her, the dire wolf clamoring to be released. The chains clinked against the stone as she moved, her eyes never leaving mine. "You're not afraid," I said, curious. "Why?" Her eyes locked on mine, burning with intensity. "Because you're not the only one with ancestors who left a mark." She fought me every time I came near, snarling and spitting curses. "You think because you stole me that I'll bend?" she hissed. I yanked the chain around her throat, forcing her to look at me. "You will bend, and you will bear my blood. You were made for this." Her eyes flared with a feral light, and the silver cuffs glowed white-hot for a moment, pulsing like a heartbeat. I stepped back, watching her closely. "Touch me again," she whispered, her voice a low growl, "and I will kill you." I smiled, but inside something dark curled with unease, because I felt it now, the fusion of her magic, her wolf, and her fury, and I wasn't sure which part of her would surface first. Days turned into nights, and she didn't cry or plead. Every moment in those chains, she sat taller, stared longer, and spoke sharper. And when she was silent and still, I thought she'd given up. I knew the longer time passed, I would run the risk of her mangy mutts finding her. I took her far enough away that it would take some time for them to smell her scent. So the time was now. I stripped my clothes, stood in front of her so she could see what was coming. I'm sure I will please more than those 4 weaklings combined. As I began to stroke my cock to get it hard, she didn't flinch, didn't say a word. She just closed her eyes. "You're missing the previews of the show, little half-blood." The stone beneath her began to hum with an ancient power, and the air grew thick with anticipation. The runes on the cuffs started to glow, and I knew. She was calling upon a power older than any of us, a power that would either destroy her or set her free. I watched as her body began to convulse, the chains rattling loudly as she thrashed. Her eyes snapped open, glowing with an amber feral light, and she let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the ruin. She transformed into her dire wolf. It was fucking magnificent. But my satisfaction was short-lived, as I realized that her power was beyond anything I'd imagined. I had underestimated her. Ciel's dire wolf form was a sight to behold. Massive, muscular, and covered in white and silver fur that seemed to absorb the light. She snapped the chains like they were made of twigs. Her eyes locked on me with pure, unadulterated hatred. I drew my sword, ready to fight for my life, but it was already too late. She lunged at me, her teeth bared, and I felt a sharp, searing pain as she tore into my flesh. I managed to land a few blows, but they were mere scratches compared to the damage she was inflicting. The guards tried to intervene, but she was a whirlwind of fury, tearing through them with ease. Blood sprayed across the floor, painting the ancient stones in crimson. The scent of death and destruction filled the air, and I knew I was going to die. As my vision began to fade, I saw her standing over me, her chest heaving, her eyes wild. She was a vision of raw power, a dire wolf in her prime, and she was fucking magnificent. With a final roar, she ended my life. I had underestimated her, and now I would be remembered as the fool who tried to claim a dire wolf. Her power echoed through the ruin, a testament to her strength, and a warning to any who might dare challenge her. She was the blood that should have been mine, and now she was free. Aiden's POV. We'd waited our whole lives for this day. We just hadn't known it. The moon was high, full and sharp in a cloudless Irish sky, and the land itself seemed to hush as if holding its breath. There was no wind tonight, no birdsong, just the quiet hum of something ancient moving beneath the earth. Something that had been asleep for far too long. Ciel, our mate, our Luna. She would stand in the center of our ancestral estate beneath sacred stone and sky and take her place as not just our Luna, but the heart of our pack. The house was unrecognizable. Kian had ensured the ancient rites were followed to the letter. He'd pulled out scrolls older than any of us, whispering to the ancestors as he traced every symbol in chalk and ash. He spent hours reinforcing the ward lines carved into the hearths, mixing crushed bone and wild sage into the fire pits around the perimeter of the house and courtyard. He wasn't just preparing for a ceremony. He was preparing to anchor legend. Liam, quiet and methodical as always, had strung glowing orbs of will-o'-the-wisp light between the trees like hovering stars. He carved runes into candles, one for each pack member, one for each vow we'd make to her. His hands didn't shake, but his jaw was tight the entire time. He always felt the deepest when he said nothing at all. Declan, of course, had handled the physical clearing. He tore through the woods like a storm, making sure the boundaries were secured. Not even a bird crossed the perimeter without his knowing. But when he came back to help braid ivy into the circle stones, he did it in complete silence. Reverent, as if he was terrified she'd vanish if he didn't get every knot exactly right. And me? I'd made sure her room was ready. Soft linens, candles made of honey and ash, bowls of crushed lavender and wolfroot. I had laid out the ceremonial robes, all white with silver threading to represent her dual lineage. By twilight, the courtyard pulsed with pack energy. Dozens of shifters had gathered in a wide circle, others summoned from old allied bloodlines. All of them were still, alert, watching. Because everyone could feel it now. The change, the storm. She stepped into the circle wearing white, but it wasn't the fabric that caught my breath. It was her. Every inch of her glowed with purpose, fierce and delicate at once, her eyes catching the torchlight like silver fire. Her dark curls were braided back, adorned with white lilies and clovers Liam had crafted by hand. Kian met her in the center, holding the ceremonial blade. "Ciel McLaughlin," he said, voice steady. "You have been called by the blood, by the moon, and by fate. Do you come willingly?" She met his gaze without hesitation. "I do." "Do you accept the bonds offered? Not just love, but duty, the protection of the pack, the mantle of Luna." "I do." My chest ached with how much I wanted her, how much I needed her to never doubt what she was to us. Kian turned to the three of us. Liam stepped forward. "I vow to serve our Luna with blade and blood." Declan next. "I vow to protect her above all things." Then me. "I vow to love her without fear, in life and through death." Then Kian handed her the blade. She didn't flinch. With one sharp motion, she drew blood from her palm, and we each did the same. We pressed our hands together, 4 against hers, and the moment skin met skin, everything exploded. Power poured through the circle like lightning through water. The earth trembled. The torches surged 10 feet into the air, then burned blue. Some wolves in the crowd shifted, unwillingly. The surge of magic, too much to contain. Ciel gasped. Her eyes were glowing. Silver at first, then violet. Witch and wolf. Luna and storm. Every bond snapped into place in that moment, not just emotional, but physical. I could feel her heartbeat inside my chest, her pain, her pleasure, her breath syncing with mine. I felt stronger. All of us did. Liam's shoulders squared. Declan rolled his neck like something primal had snapped loose. Kian stood taller, chest heaving, his hand gripping her blood-slicked palm like he'd never let go. And the pack? They bowed. Every last one. Through the bond, her dire wolf strengthened their wolves. Our pack was now formidable, because she wasn't just our Luna now. She was the power the blood had waited for. What we had was older than vows, older than rings. She belonged to all of us, and we belonged to her. Ciel's POV Kian held me that night, his strong arms wrapped around me as I trembled with a mix of fear and anticipation. "My Luna," he whispered, his voice a low, soothing rumble that sent shivers down my spine. "You were made for this. For us. For everything that is to come." His words ignited a fire within me, a burning desire that demanded to be satisfied. After that night, something profound shifted between us. Kian was first, a need so deep and so intense that it felt almost sacred. He moved with a reverence that left me breathless, his touch gentle yet firm, exploring every inch of my body as if it were a treasure map leading to my soul. He started at my shoulders, his lips pressing soft, lingering kisses against my skin. Each kiss was a promise, a claim, a healing balm. He traced the lines of my collarbone with his tongue, tasting me, marking me as his own. I shivered under his touch, my body responding to his with an intensity that left me gasping. "You are mine, Ciel," he murmured against my skin, his voice a low growl that sent waves of desire coursing through me. "And I am yours." I marked him with my teeth, claiming him as he had claimed me. I sank my teeth into his shoulder, tasting his blood, feeling the bond between us snap into place like a rubber band pulled too tight. "My alpha." He groaned, his body shuddering with pleasure and pain. I knew he felt the raw primal connection that bound us together. In return, he marked me, his teeth sinking into the soft flesh of my shoulder, just below my collarbone. The pain was sharp and sudden, but it quickly morphed into something else. Something hot and liquid that spread through my veins like wildfire. I cried out, my body arching against his, as the mark took hold, branding me as his mate. Kian's hands roamed my body, exploring, claiming, worshipping. He knew every curve, every inch of me, and he took his time, savoring me as if I were a feast laid out before him. His fingers dipped between my thighs, finding me wet and ready. He teased me, circling my clit, dipping inside me, building my pleasure until I was a writhing, moaning mess beneath him. "Kian," I whispered, my voice hoarse with need. "Please." He responded with a low growl, his body covering mine, his hardness pressing against my entrance. He entered me. I wrapped my legs around him, urging him deeper, wanting all of him, needing all of him. Our bodies moved in sync, our breaths mingling, our hearts beating as one. The room was filled with the sounds of our passion, the wet slapping of flesh, the low growls and moans, the desperate pleas for more. It was raw, it was intense, and it was perfect. As we reached the peak of our pleasure, Kian's teeth found my mark, sinking in again, reinforcing the bond between us. I cried out, my body convulsing as waves of ecstasy washed over me, leaving me boneless and spent in his arms. But he wasn't done. He continued to move, his hips thrusting against mine, chasing his own release. With a final deep thrust, he came, his body shuddering, his seed spilling inside me, sealing our bond. Aiden was next, his touch fierce and passionate, his kisses bruising and demanding. I moved my head to his shoulder and bit down hard. His blood tasted like cold silver streaming down my throat. He flipped me onto my hands and knees, his hands gripping my hips as he entered me from behind. His thrusts were powerful, each one driving me forward, my breasts swinging with the force of his movements. He leaned over me, his teeth sinking into my other shoulder, marking me as his. The pain was exquisite, sending shivers of pleasure down my spine. "You feel so good, CL," he growled, his voice hoarse with desire. So tight, so wet. His words spurred me on, and I pushed back against him, meeting his thrusts with my own, our bodies slapping together in a primal rhythm. He reached around, his fingers finding my clit, rubbing in tight circles, building my pleasure until I was screaming his name, my body convulsing with an orgasm that left me shuddering. Aiden's grip on my hips tightened, his thrusts becoming erratic as he chased his own release. With a final deep thrust, he came, his body shuddering, his seed spilling inside me, sealing our bond. Liam was gentle yet intense, his touch soothing yet firm. He laid me on my back, his body covering mine as he penetrated. His movements were deliberate, each thrust measured and deep, hitting that sweet spot inside me that made me arch off the bed. Wrapping my arms around his neck, kissing and sucking the crook of his neck, I trailed my tongue to his shoulder and bit him. He leaned down, his teeth sinking into my shoulder, marking me as his. The pain was a sharp contrast to the pleasure, sending me spiraling into an orgasm that left me sobbing his name. "Liam," I whispered, my voice hoarse with emotion. "You feel so good." He smiled against my skin, his hips continuing to move, drawing out my pleasure, building his own. With a final deep thrust, he came, his seed spilling inside me, sealing our bond. Declan was fierce and dominant, his touch commanding and possessive. He flipped me onto my stomach, his hands gripping my ass as he entered me from behind. His thrusts were powerful, each one driving me into the mattress, my face pressed into the pillows, my cries of pleasure muffled by the fabric. He leaned over me, his teeth sinking into my shoulder, marking me as his. The pain was exquisite, sending shivers of pleasure down my spine. "You're mine, CL," he growled, his voice a low rumble. "Always and forever." His words sent me over the edge, and I came, my body convulsing, my scream of pleasure echoing through the room. Declan's grip on my ass tightened, his thrusts becoming erratic as he chased his own release. With a final deep thrust, he came, his body shuddering, his seed spilling inside me, sealing our bond. He turned me back around and held me in his arms. With the last bit of strength I had, I bit his shoulder. The taste of his blood, warm, soothing, igniting my fire again. He growled. By the time they were done, I was a mess of marks, bites, and bruises, each one a testament to the love and passion we shared. I was theirs, and they were mine, bound together by a mating bond that was as sacred as it was carnal. Our scents mingled, a heady mix of musk and male that drove me wild with desire. I could feel their warm seed in me, a physical reminder of our bond, of their claim on me. As I lay there, surrounded by my mates, their arms wrapped around me, their scents mingling with mine, I knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be, with them, forever. Our bonding was complete, and I was marked, claimed, and loved by all four of my mates. The girl who once cried herself to sleep in a Nebraska orphanage is dead. In her place stands the last of the McLaughlins, reborn, blood-soaked, wild, and claimed, and I am never alone again. POV, Kian O'Neill. She was so still in my arms, I wouldn't have known she was awake if I hadn't felt the change in her breathing. Light, shallow, just beginning to return to her body after the storm we'd all carried her through. The bond was still burning low in her veins. A mating mark shared by 4 wolves was no small thing, not even for a dire-blooded hybrid. Her body had given, taken, accepted, and transformed. And now, it was healing. I shifted slightly, careful not to jostle her. Her back was tucked to my chest, one thigh draped over mine, her skin warm and slick with the scent of sex, wolf, and something older. Her magic. It curled in the air around her like mist, soft and sharp all at once. Aiden had called it wild light. He wasn't wrong. She glowed even now. But where our teeth had broken her skin left her body still thrummed with soreness. Our marks. Not cruel. Not branding. A claim. A bond. A vow. And now it was my duty to soothe it. I lowered my mouth to her skin, right to the puncture scars already trying to close, and let my tongue trace each one slowly. The salt of her sweat. The iron of our bonds. The raw echo of what we'd done the night before. I licked them again, slower this time, healing them with the natural antiseptic in my wolf's saliva. She whimpered softly. "Easy," I murmured against her skin. "I know it aches. Let me ease it." She turned her face into the crook of my neck, the softest exhale slipping past her lips. "Feels warm," she mumbled, "but everything else feels like fire." I know. Her body was processing what no wolf had done in over a millennium. Take 4 marks, 4 mates, 4 bonds. Even dire wolves weren't built for that kind of convergence. But she had survived it. No, she had thrived. Somewhere beyond the room, I heard Aiden's voice. He was in the study, phone cradled between shoulder and jaw, flipping pages of a handwritten journal. "Yes," he was saying, low but urgent. Her mother's name was Ciora MacAoda. She disappeared from County Waterford in the 90s, presumed dead, but we think she fled. There's a trail in the old grimoires. Blood rituals, binding marks, something about the dire womb. I tuned him out. Not because it wasn't important. It was. But because she was here, in my arms, and everything I was belonged to this moment. The twins were gone, out at the western ridge, checking the perimeter. Declan had been almost feral when he left, his wolf riding close to the surface. Liam was quiet, but the bond told me he was vibrating beneath the calm. They were restless, protective, charged. The entire pack had changed the moment CL accepted her role, and so had we. I kissed her bare shoulder, one hand tracing down her side, holding her closer. "You're safe," I whispered. "Even from myself?" she asked, voice smaller than I liked. I closed my eyes. "Especially from yourself." I could feel the exhaustion pulling at her again. Her body needed rest. Days of it, probably. But even now, her wolf was restless beneath the surface, turning over, stretching limbs made new. "You'll shift soon," I said. She stiffened slightly. "I'm not ready. I'm too tired." "You will be. She's close. My wolf can tell she's restless." "I don't know how to be all of this, Kian." I nuzzled into the back of her neck. "You don't have to know. Just be. We'll walk the rest of it with you." Her fingers found my wrist where I held her. She didn't speak again. Her heart was steady. She drifted back to sleep. And for the first time since she came into our world, so was mine. Aiden's POV while CL lay cocooned in Kian's arms, sore, spent, and stunningly, heartbreakingly still. I sat in the study, surrounded by a half-mad scatter of ancient tomes, cracked grimoire pages, and handwritten journals that smelled of cedar, dust, and something darker. Her blood had awakened something. In us. In the pack. In the land itself. But it wasn't just wolf blood humming through her veins. It was witch blood. And not just any. Blood traced to the old covens that vanished before the first council even formed. And I had questions. The call I made was to an old contact, Roan Fahey, a half-fae scholar of forbidden magic and esoteric bloodlines who owed me more than a few favors. He answered groggy and irritable, but when I mentioned Siora Mac Iota, he went quiet. "I thought she was dead," he finally said. "She is, but her daughter's alive, and she's ours." "Yours?" A dry chuckle. "You mean she's bound to your pack?" "More than that," I said quietly. "She's our Luna." "Shit!" I'd sent Roan a few snapshots of what CL had uncovered in the library, images of the Mac Auda seal, a few fragments of old Gaelic spellwork, a worn sigil pressed into a wax journal page. Now I sat with his reply pulled up on my tablet. I read it 3 times before it sank in. Coven, Kaoranok's daughters. Purpose, hybrid creation, binding womb, ritualized bloodline preservation. Status, scattered, driven underground by council decree. Forbidden after the 1602 Triskel Rebellion. Bloodline trait, extreme magical potency in female offspring. Enhanced shifter compatibility. My blood ran cold. They weren't just witches. They were breeding power. They had once worked hand in hand with dire wolves, possibly even created bonds between witch and wolf to weaponize the offspring. And now one of those offspring was curled in bed upstairs, marked by 4 alphas, glowing with old magic and wolf fire. CL wasn't an accident of fate. She was engineered. I closed the journal slowly and ran a hand down my face. I stood, walked to the liquor shelf, and poured 2 fingers of Dun and Ree whiskey. Let it burn down my throat. Let it settle the twitch in my spine. Because if the council knew, truly knew, what CL was, they wouldn't stop at exile. They'd hunt her, bind her, possibly try to destroy her before her power eclipsed theirs. And that wasn't going to happen. Not while I was breathing. Kian entered the room a moment later, bare-chested, calm, but alert. "She's sleeping again. Deeper this time." I nodded and slid the parchment across the desk toward him. "Her mother's coven. It's worse than we thought." He read it. When he looked up, his face had gone flat. Cold. "We tell her everything. No more half-truths." "You sure?" I asked. "It'll change how she sees herself. She's just beginning to come into the wolf. This could overload her." His jaw ticked. "She deserves the truth." POV, Aidan O'Neill. The message came through encrypted email. No name, no sender trace, just a seal etched into the body of the text. 3 interwoven thorns surrounding a blood moon. The mark of the Kaoranak sisterhood. My stomach turned cold. I opened it. "She is not yours to keep. She is of the blood. The first heir in a generation. You do not know what she carries or what follows her. The Luna belongs to the earth, not to the wolves. We will reclaim her soon." My hand curled around the edge of the desk. The journal I'd been reading slid sideways as my fingers clenched. My wolf rose instantly, a low growl forming in the back of my throat before I even realized I was making a sound. Reclaim her? No. No, they wouldn't. They couldn't. CL belonged with us. With me. With Kian, Declan, Liam. She had accepted our marks. Choose the bond. Let the moon bind us together in body, soul, and power. We are her pack. And no coven, no bloodline, no ancient matriarchal order of secretive witches was going to tear her away from us now. Kian had gone back upstairs to check on her. She was still asleep, deep and tangled in the aftermath of the mating bond. I could feel her through the link. Soft. Dreaming. Exhausted. Unaware of the threat crawling out of her mother's past. Damn, she already survived enough. Being taken by Kale. Waking her wolf. Accepting 4 mates at once. And now this? A war over who owned her? I paced to the fireplace and dug my fingers into the mantle to keep from putting my fist through the stone. Then I lifted my head, mind linking my brothers, Declan, Liam, return once done. There was silence for a moment before I felt Declan respond, a flash of sharp energy through the bond. You all right, brother? Not even close, I growled. Get your asses back here as soon as you're done. We need to talk. It's about CL. I turned back to the desk, read the message one more time. Every word sank into me like a fang. The Luna belongs to the earth, not to the wolves. They were wrong. She belonged to herself. But she was ours too. And they were going to learn that the hard way. POV Kian. The moment Aiden said the word coven, my wolf went still. Still in that dangerous way. Like the moment right before a kill. Breathless. Cold. Calculating. We were in the sitting room, just the two of us, while CL slept upstairs, her body still tender from the bond. And now this? Now they wanted to come for her? The witches. The ones who abandoned her. The ones who killed her mother. No. No fucking way. Wait, what did you just say? I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. Aiden's jaw was tight. He passed me the tablet, the coven's message still glowing on the screen. My eyes skimmed the text. She is not yours to keep. She is of the blood. We will reclaim her soon. I set the tablet down gently. Too gently. Because if I didn't, I was going to crush it in my palm. Reclaim her, I repeated slowly, tasting the words like poison. They knew she survived, Aiden said, voice grim. They knew what she was, that she had her mother's magic and her father's wolf. That makes her something they feared, and something they could never control. And now they want her back because they sense the bond. I finished, heat rising through my chest, because she's powerful now. They don't just want her back, he added. They see her as their heir. I turned my face toward the window. The sky outside was storm-heavy, low and gray. I could feel the pressure rising across the land. I thought the coven was scattered, I growled. Not all of them, Aiden said. I did some digging last night. Quiet backdoor channels through Roan Fahey's old occult archives. He met my eyes. Her mother, Ciora, she was African-born, Beninese, descended from one of the oldest living bloodlines of earth witches. She came to Ireland with her mother in the late 80s. Both of them had magic that could make the ground bloom or die with a single whisper. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, barely breathing. Aiden continued. Ciora was chosen by the coven to mate with a dire wolf shifter, part of an old blood ritual they hadn't performed in centuries. But she fell in love with him before the rite. It wasn't about power for them. It was love. And the coven didn't like that, I said, my voice low and dark. No, they called it betrayal. Ciora ran with him, hid for years. She gave birth to CL in secret. They thought they'd escaped. My chest cracked open with something sharp. And then? They found her, he said simply. CL was only a toddler. They killed Ciora. Her mate, CL's father, barely escaped with the child. He smuggled her out of the country, went to the States, and put her in an orphanage. To keep her hidden, I murmured. Aiden nodded. To keep her alive. Silence stretched between us. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, feel my wolf pacing under my skin, fur-brushing bones, teeth bared. They took her mother. They caused her father to flee another continent. And now they wanted to drag our Luna back into that world like she was some kind of pawn. No. Absolutely the fuck not. She's not theirs to reclaim, I said through gritted teeth. They lost that right the moment they put a blade in her mother's throat. Aiden met my gaze. They'll come for her anyway. Then let them. I stood, rage simmering just beneath the surface. She's not just ours by blood. She chose us. She accepted the mark. She's our Luna. Agreed. We've bled for her. We've shifted for her. We've bonded our wolves to her soul. She'd never leave us willingly. They know that, I said, which means they'll try to take her. My mind was already racing. Wards, defense lines, old pack magic that hadn't been stirred in generations. I walked to the fireplace, gripped the mantle with both hands, and lowered my head. Then I opened the mind link. Declan, Liam, get back to the estate, now. We have a problem. And it's about CL. They answered immediately. Twin pulses of energy, sharper than usual. On our way. Aiden came to stand beside me. If they try to force her, he said, we won't be the only ones ready to fight. The pack felt what she gave us last night. She's not just our Luna. She's their Luna now, too. I looked toward the stairs, toward where she slept, unaware, so soft, so strong, so utterly not ready for what was coming. POV. CL, I was sore, everywhere, but it wasn't just the lingering ache from the mating bond. This was deeper, bone deep, soul deep, like something in me was adjusting to a new shape, and my body was trying to catch up. The room smelled faintly of sage, pine, and cayenne. His scent was the strongest on the sheets wrapped around me, grounding and heavy. But I don't feel him near me now. The house felt off, still, too still. My wolf didn't stir, but she was alert, awake in the corners of my mind, waiting. I wrapped one of Kian's shirts around me, padded barefoot down the hall and into the kitchen. Aiden was by the far window, back rigid, his phone clutched in one hand. The screen was dark. He wasn't using it, just holding it like it had delivered something he couldn't put down. Kian was at the counter, hands braced on the edge like he'd been standing there for a long time, trying not to punch through the granite. When they saw me, both men stiffened. No smiles. No good morning. Just silence, thick as fog. What's going on? I asked softly. Neither answered. Aiden looked at Kian. Kian looked at me. Where are Liam and Declan? I asked. On their way back, Kian said. His voice was gentle, but flat. I mind-linked them. We need to talk. Something in my chest twisted. What happened? Kian stepped forward. I noticed now how tight his jaw was, how his eyes kept flashing between their deep forest green and that dangerous silver-gold glow. CL, he said slowly, we received a message from the witches. My heart skipped. What? Witches? Aiden turned away from the window. Your mother's coven. I blinked. What do they want from me now? I don't know, he said. But what I do know is the coven is in Benin. They've resurfaced, claiming you are their heir and we are to relinquish you to them. You know, we won't. I felt the floor shift. I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to be apart from you guys. Kian came closer, placed a hand gently on my lower back. You're their heir, CL. Their next high priestess. The moment you fully accepted your wolf and mated with us, something in the bloodline awakened. And they felt it. I stared at him. No. I don't even know them. They can't just... What do they want? Aiden's mouth was tight. They want to reclaim you. Reclaim. Like I was an object, a birthright, a tool. They say I belong to them, I said, my voice rising. That they're going to just take me? They think they can, Kian growled. But they're wrong. The silence afterward was unbearable. I felt sick, like I was floating outside my body. But why now? I asked. Why not years ago? Why hide me all this time? And that's when Aiden told me. All of it. About my mother, Ciora, her lineage, her power, how she came from Africa to Ireland as a teenager, already trained in a branch of earth magic that could twist bone and breathe life into soil. How the coven had chosen her to be paired with a dire wolf, not for love, but for breeding. She fell in love with him anyway, Aiden said. Not as part of some ritual, not for power, real love. My throat burned. She ran with him, he continued. And when she gave birth to you, they hunted her down. Killed her. I gasped. My knees buckled, and Kian caught me. My father? He survived. Just barely. He smuggled you out of Ireland, got you into the US, and left you at an orphanage to protect you, to hide you from the coven. I couldn't breathe. They murdered my mother, I whispered, and now they think they can come back and… What? Drag me back like I'm a vessel to refill? Kian's grip tightened around me. You are not theirs. You never were. But they have my blood, I said bitterly. My mother's blood. Doesn't that count for something? It counts, he said, voice low and lethal. It means they had their chance, and they lost it the moment they took her from you. I collapsed into one of the kitchen stools, trying to piece the jagged truth together in my mind. I was the child of a forbidden love, born of wolf and witch. And now, a war, whether I wanted it or not, was building around my blood. I don't want a throne, I said quietly. I just wanted to know who I was. Kian crouched in front of me, both hands on my thighs, eyes burning into mine. You're ours, he said. That's who you are. Declan's POV. They always come through the woods first. Witches, I mean. Not loud, not fast. Never brute force. Just quiet. Like sickness in still water. You don't notice it until it's already under your skin. It had been 3 weeks since the council meeting. 2 weeks since CL was marked and mated. 2 weeks since she shook the earth beneath our pack's feet and lit our damn blood on fire. And now, they were here. I crouched in the underbrush, low to the ground, my wolf just beneath the surface. The night was too still, too quiet. Not even the crows called. That's when I saw it. A circle carved into the bark of one of the old birch trees, delicate but deep. The edges darkened like the wood had been burned from the inside out. Inside the ring, a crescent moon cradling a drop of blood. It was old coven magic, a claiming ward. Liam saw it the same second I did. He growled low in his throat. That's the third one we've found. Fourth, I muttered. There was one by the creek I didn't tell Kian about yet. Liam swore under his breath. They're marking territory. They're marking her. I stood up slowly, my fists clenched. They thought this land was theirs to tread, that they could come into our woods, leave their symbols like dog piss and curse smoke, and just take what they wanted. They didn't know what we were, what I was. I might be the youngest, the quietest, but I was the most feral of the four, and my wolf was barely leashed since the Luna bond was sealed. The moment I scented those marks, the moment I smelled witch on moss and blood on birch bark, I felt my control fray. Liam looked at me warily. You good? I didn't answer. I just stared at the tree. I wanted to rip it out by the roots. Back at the estate, we returned just before dawn, shadows long behind us. Kian and Aiden were already in the war room, maps spread, old Celtic texts opened and annotated. CL was still asleep upstairs. We didn't want her to see this yet, not until we were sure of what we were dealing with. But I already knew. They're inside our borders, I growled, slamming one of the etched birch branches down on the table. They left this less than 20 yards from the western edge. Aiden picked it up carefully. His nostrils flared. Blood ink. Fey ash. Nightshade dust. Kian's jaw tightened. They're summoning something. They're summoning her, I snapped, trying to draw her out. A long silence followed. And then Liam said what we were all thinking. "They're coming to reclaim her." My wolf howled inside me. "No!" "She's not leaving this house without one of us by her side," I said, voice like gravel. "Not even to breathe." Kian nodded once. "We'll ward the perimeter, reinforce the protections, and if they want to test our bond, they'll bleed for it," I finished. Aiden looked up, his eyes sharp and full of something ancient. "We need to tell her soon. She's part of this fight whether she's ready or not." "She doesn't need to be ready," I muttered. "She just needs to stay safe." Liam's POV. We were primed for battle, our senses heightened and our wolves restless. Every alarm spell in the forest had been tripped over the past 3 nights, the scent of witches growing stronger, a rotten stench that seeped into the earth like a poison. The birds had stopped singing near the estate, the wind held its breath, and Ciel began to wake from her dreams, her breath coming in shallow gasps, her skin slick with a cold sweat. Something was close. We could feel it in our bones, a restless energy that kept us on edge. Ciel was upstairs, finally resting after an exhausting day of training, learning to harness her magic without being overwhelmed by it. Her wolf was growing stronger, as was her witch side, but she didn't yet understand the full extent of her power. The witches, however, did. It happened just after midnight. The air grew still, an eerie calm that set our hackles on edge. Then, without warning, a pulse of magic slammed into the house like a physical force, rattling the windows and snapping the wards into a deafening silence. We rushed to the front, our wolves fully shifted, snarling and ready to tear through the glass. And there they were, 8 witches cloaked in ash-gray robes, their faces obscured, circling a tall figure with silver hair and hands painted with blood ink. The senior witch. The trees around them bowed, as if acknowledging their power, and the ground beneath our paws trembled with an ancient dark energy. Kian growled beside me, his hackles raised, his eyes glowing with a feral light. "We can take them," he mind-linked, his voice a low rumble of fury. But as we moved toward the door, we slammed into an invisible barrier. I yelped in pain as magic laced with sulfur and lavender burned across my snout. We were sealed inside, trapped like animals in a cage. Aiden's mind link was a snarl of frustration, a containment spell. They locked us in. I roared, clawing at the invisible wall, but it held firm, mocking our strength. Then the senior witch stepped forward, raising her arms, and began to chant, her voice a low, insidious whisper that seemed to crawl into our minds. She didn't speak aloud to us, but into the earth, into Ciel's blood, calling upon the ancient magic that bound them. The runes around the house flared to life, not ours, but theirs, and a tendril of crimson and silver energy snaked through the walls, seeking its target. Kian roared, a sound of pure agony and rage. "No!" Declan bolted up the stairs, his paws pounding on the wood, a desperate howl tearing from his throat. But it was too late. As the witches vanished, blinking out of existence like shadows into smoke, we felt it. The tearing, the ripping away of something sacred. A burning pain bloomed in our chests, a searing agony that felt like our souls were being torn apart. Declan's howl from the second floor was a sound of pure despair. "She's gone!" My legs gave out, and I collapsed to the floor, my wolf form trembling, my chest heaving with ragged breaths, my head pressed to the cold tile. The link to Ciel was still there, but it was faint, weak, like she was being pulled through an endless void. Aiden slammed into the invisible barrier again, his teeth bared, his eyes wild with desperation. "We can't reach her!" Kian's voice was a snarl of fury and grief, his eyes fully golden, a sign of his wolf's dominance. "They took her to Africa, Benin, her ancestral land." "They planned this," I said, shifting back to my human form, my voice broken and hoarse with emotion. "This wasn't a warning. This was a coordinated attack. They want to complete what they started with her mother, Declan said from upstairs, his voice shaking with rage and sorrow. They want her to choose them. To finish the ritual her mother refused. Kian looked up, his expression a mix of determination and deadly intent. Then we go get her, and God's help anything that stands in our way. Our bond with CL was a living, breathing thing, and its sudden absence left a void that ached with a physical pain. We knew, without a doubt, that we would move heaven and earth to get her back, to protect her, to destroy anyone who dared to harm her. And so, with a final, defiant howl, we shifted back to our human forms, our bodies trembling with the effort of holding back our wolf's rage. We dressed quickly, our movements synchronized by years of fighting side by side, and prepared to leave. The estate was silent, the only sound the howling wind and the distant rumble of thunder. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. We stepped out into the night, our hearts heavy with loss and our minds focused on one thing and one thing only: rescuing our mate. Little did we know, the journey ahead would test the very limits of our strength, our love, and our unbreakable bond. The brothers POV Aiden. She was gone. I kept reading the same page over and over, eyes scanning words that had stopped making sense. Something about earthbound sigils, ancestral tethers, and soul anchoring across bloodlines. But it all blurred together. I hadn't slept in 2 days. The moment the witches took her, a piece of me stopped functioning. It wasn't just emotional, it was physical. My chest ached constantly, like an iron band pulled tight around my ribs. Her scent was still everywhere in the house, on the sheets, in the kitchen, on my skin. I hadn't even changed my shirt. I opened another window on my laptop, digging deeper. Her mother had been Nigerian. That much I was sure of. The bloodline was older, rural, Oba roots. Oba magic wasn't something we learned about in Irish texts. I had to reach out to a former council archivist who'd gone rogue in Mali. She owed me a favor. I typed furiously. Oba Coven Benin, matriarchal, bloodline rituals, Hauswas dire wolf union. The cursor blinked. My hands shook. My wolf was pacing beneath my skin, furious that all I could do was read,